someone asked him what the best piece of dating advice he could give to guys. And he says, during high school, have lots of female friends.
Yeah.
He apparently just hung with this big group of guys and girls and had tons of female friends and did exactly what you said. Female friends for guys are low stakes test relationships.
Absolutely. Growing up, all my friends were men, and I still have a really large circle of male friends. My birthdays, every year, if there's a table like this, 80% of them will be my male friends.
Is that not an Islam thing, though, rather than like a friend thing?
As in, like, why?
You've just, as far as I'm aware, the typical Muslim family would have like the fucking uncles are over and all of the rest of it.
Yeah, we do have a big male dominance in our world. Technically, we shouldn't really be interacting opposite genders. I know I shouldn't be, but I do. I'll be honest, it's haram. So I do, and I have a huge. But the thing is, what it meant is, I have a plethora of understanding about the male psyche that I could never get from a textbook. A lot of people will say to me when it comes to my content online, they say you have a very unique perspective. How do you know this? And I said, honestly, it's because I have so many males around me and I have an interest in them. So I'll ask loads of questions and I'll understand their relationships. I meet their girlfriends and I understand. So it gives me up-to-date data about what's going on with men. But I am biased because what happens is I naturally only know men who are confident, but I don't know what the psychology as much of the guy that's stuck in his mum's basement and addicted to pornography. And I think I'm learning that by how triggered they get by certain conversations online. So I just think it, like Destiny said, it definitely does give you a framework of understanding the male brain that you can't get through other women.
That would be an unbelievably unpopular piece of advice to give to a lot of the manosphere, to say that one of the best things you could do would be to be friends with women so that it's a low stakes training ground for finding a partner down the line, because it's kind of common advice that you don't need any women in your life, that like all you need is your boys. What could I ever get from a woman, etc., etc. There was this massive debate, did the sexual revolution fail, that happened this week in LA, and one of my friends, Louise Perry, was on one of the sides. Grimes was opposite her, and Tim Dillon was there. It was mediated by Barry Weiss, and Rob Henderson, one of my friends, tweeted this earlier on. It's amazing. He says, there's lots of discussion at the sexual revolution debate about whether the revolution failed men or failed women, or helped men more than women, or helped women more than men. Nobody asked whether the sexual revolution failed children. People already know it's too depressing of a topic.
Yeah, absolutely accurate. It basically failed both genders, but when you fail both genders, you fail children because they're the remnants of two broken people. So I think it's massively failed children, but I think in some ways it's definitely favored the man that has no desire to invest and have responsibility. That's the only man that favors from this, is he gets a bunch of women to have low enough self-esteem that they will be able to allow him access without any investment. Meanwhile, while he can then go on to meet the girl he actually wants to be with, whilst this girl is happy to come at 4 a.m. after a night out. So it's the opposite of feminism. It's allowing men free reign over females, and whilst investing very, very little. I don't know who tricked women into thinking that this is beneficial, but whoever did is probably a man.
And then down the line from that, they've also managed to trick women into believing that it's fine for the guy to stay at home and play video games and make sure that the sandwiches are done all day. You can go out and earn the money. Yeah, I mean, it's such a trope, but people make these funny tweets online about how the patriarchy is so powerful it conned women into providing for men as well.
Yeah, and the other thing that I spoke about this quite recently is the pushing the bisexuality, which only, again, benefits...
What's that? I haven't heard you talk about this.
Well, in pornography, there is a lot of emphasis on girl, and there's a lot of threesomes and so on and so forth. And in my personal experience, seeing a lot of straight women engage in threesome activities primarily to please the man, but they'll convince themselves that they like girls, but they only seem to like girls in the presence of their partner that suggested the threesome, and they only seem to like the girl that their partner had an insight into selecting. And you know it's not true bisexuality, because when their husband or their partner's not there, they no longer have this interest in women. And also when they really care about the guy, they don't engage in the threesomes. And I know when they love the guy a lot, they don't want to share him. But if you were truly bisexual, you wouldn't have that jealousy, because you'd be like, this is an equal playing field. I also get to touch the girl. But what I think that's happened is the rise in kind of experimenting, sexual experimenting is again only benefiting men. I know so many men that are in open relationships where he can sleep with other women, but she can't sleep with other men, but she can sleep with other women. Who benefits from that? I would imagine women who have never watched porn, they would have lower rates of bisexuality than women who are addicts or watch regularly and who are partnered with men who also make the suggestion about threesomes. I would wonder how many women who, without the external influences, because we've been taught for many, many years in the recent data that homosexuality and bisexuality is innate and it's something you're born with. But if the advent of pornography increased it, then how it must have some external forces behind it.
There was this stat that I put in my newsletter this week. Involuntary childlessness is a male problem too. 25% of men over 42 do not have children, 5% more than women of the same age group. Almost 40% have experienced depression, 25% feel a deep anger. There is a lot of publicity, quite rightly, about women and childlessness, but men are very mute about this, and that was in The Guardian.
Oh, wow. And I completely agree, because one thing that men online, their voice online to kind of shame women is, well, you don't have kids. But unfortunately, who suffers more from when you don't have kids? What they find is women without kids and without marriage earn, I think, about 70% more than men that don't have marriage and kids, because marriage and kids gives men a purpose and meaning that they can't derive from anything else. It gives them the motivation to work harder. It gives them the motivation to do those hard jobs that pay more. It gives them a will to live. With women, we can still find connections with our friends and family and parents, and we can spread out our connections. But if you look at most men, if we look at your fathers and in that generation, without their wives, they're a bit lost. I know my dad would not know what to do with his day if my mom wasn't around. And as they age, one of the things that doctors always say, the first thing that as you get older and you go to the doctors, they'll say to you, have you got a wife? And even with my dad, when they do a checkup, have you got a wife? They check. Because why? Because the rate of healing after surgery is faster and quicker when you have a wife. And your rate of recovery from cancer is better when you have a wife. Somebody checking in on you does a lot for a man, because they don't get that from their social network as much as women do. So a woman aging alone, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but she's more adapted to it than a man aging alone, who then starts to self-sabotage and actually kind of life becomes a slow suicide for them.
Why do you think there's this generalized culture of anti-children and family creation at the moment?
I wonder where that's stemming from. I do think it's a sad reality. I don't know where that's coming from. I just think the reality is there's so many alternatives to having kids now. You can travel, you can really become something. If you want to become famous, you can become famous. You can travel the world, you can make a lot of money, you can do all of these things. But if you speak to people who have even scored goals in the World Cup, they'll still tell you that their best moment of their life is when their child was born. So I think it's a really negative thing to place on society. I think the reality is when you know that you're going to have kids, you have to take more responsibility of your life. You have to save more money, you have to look after your health. It gives you a will to live. Now, to remove from you is a slow and steady self-sabotage. When you don't have any children for the rest of your life and you think you're never going to have them, essentially you could be a car wreck and no one's going to watch you. Whereas when you have children, it's an automatic therapy. You have to fix your traumas. You have to fix your self-sabotaging behaviors. So you're depriving yourself of reaching your full potential when you completely write that off, I believe. But I could be wrong with that. And sometimes young women, they go for older men and they'll say, yeah, but he's 40. I know I'm only 22, but at least he'll be more responsible and he will settle down. Responsibility, maturity is not defined by age. It's defined by how much responsibility you have. And I always say, if he's got to 40, no kids, no marriage under his belt, he's chosen that Peter Pan lifestyle. No 23-year-old is going to come along and make him up. He's chosen to be that man. Are you sure you want to be with him? You're better off with a 30-year-old that's got more responsibility than a 45-year-old who hasn't. Because if you think a number defines maturity, you're lost. The reality is, it's the amount of responsibility, particularly responsibility and care for others. So if he's supporting family, if he's supporting an ex-wife, or he was married or he had kids, it does something to men. It creates a level of responsibility and accountability that they can't get without that. So I do always tell women, don't be afraid of being with a man that's had kids or a man that's been married. They're better than the ones that have had no baggage, because baggage is responsibility responsibility, which is then accountability for a man. Here's the problem women have when they grow up without a father figure, and if they really feel it, is they'll always date a lot older men. So they'll be 17, 18 years old, and they're looking at the 30-year-old and the 35-year-old, and they're getting older and older, and there's a huge gap between them. Now, my experience of working with women that go for these age gap relationships is they are in survival mode without a father. They need that safety and comfort. And the conversations that we normally find really boring coming from our father about mortgage rates and saving your money, they sexualize those conversations. So when they hear it from an older man, they're like, oh, he's so responsible. They're not used to it. So they end up initially going for that older man and falling in love. But once they feel safe and they've got the money and they've got the safety, they then look for men around their own age. They end up, it's almost like having a safe, secure base. Once you've got an older father figure in your life, then you go on to see what you're sexually attracted to. But until you've got that secure base, you're in survival mode. You're looking for who can make you feel safe, not who can make you feel who you're attracted to. So they confuse, they blur the lines between attraction and safety. And they end up looking for it in an older man, but then cheating on him with a younger man. One of the things, punishments women use for a man that she feels has let her down is depriving him of access to the children. Now, the problem I see happening is with the children of such mothers, especially the men of such mothers, they go on to have very, very abusive relationships. So men who grow up with single moms who blocked access, they end up with women who are very abusive. Either they're unfaithful, or they financially abuse them, or they're physically abusive. They grow up with they end up selecting very abusive women. And from my observation and from what I'm reading, it looks like what happens is when you've been deprived of a father and you've only heard mum's side of the story, what happens is they put their mum on a pedestal. They think women are the innocent victims of harsh men. So what will happen is they're prey to women that need saving. They always gravitate towards women that they can save and help and nurture and say, oh yeah, that man was terrible, I've got you, I'm going to help you, I'm going to show you what life looks like, because I've been doing that to mum my whole life. The problem with those women is they are broken beyond you. You can't fix them. Most women can't be saved. They have something broken that they need to fix themselves. But the man that thinks he can save her is the one that's a little bit more delusional, and he gets his self-esteem from seeing her now love him. So unfortunately, he ends up going for very broken women that end up re-abusing him, and he ends up not having those boundaries that he needs with women. So they end up in very poor relationships when they've been raised by a mother that blocks access to fathers.